have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center.
There's a huge pall of smoke coming from that direction.
And good morning, everyone. This is the Rooftop Sports. Here I am joined by Steve, aka Swing for the Fences. And yep, you just came in. If you just started watching the show, if in case what you're wondering what day it is September 11th, which also, as we know, 23 years ago, the September 11th terrorist attacks happened. And I just wanted to open up and say condolences to all of those who lost their lives. Whether anyone thinks that it was a conspiracy or whether it was a terrorist attack or whatever you want to believe, the bottom line is thousands of people lost their lives and many families were affected. So condolences to them. And also condolences to those who lost their lives on September 11th, 2012 from the disastrous Benghazi attack at the U.S. Embassy, which a good movie to watch on that one is 13 Hours, in case you haven't seen it yet. Great movie. Would recommend watching it. So just thought I'd put out my thoughts on September 11th. And actually, I also want to reflect on what exactly I was doing on September 11th, 2001. So on September 11th, 2001, I was up at around like 7 in the morning, and this was already when one of the towers were already hit. I was watching the Mariners highlights, and that was when Charles Gibson made that amazing diving catch. It was an amazing diving catch. And what else do I remember? Oh, yeah. So I was watching the highlights of that Mariners-Angels game. That's when David Bell hit an RBI. Freddie Garcia was dominant. Mariners had won their 104th game of the season. And then the show went on to the best sports show period. If anyone remembers the best damn sports show period, starring Tom Arnold and which was actually a pretty legitimate show. I think there was some taboo when it was called the best damn sports show period. It actually was a pretty darn good show period. But anyways, I was in the bathroom, and the next thing I know, I come right outside, And I don't even remember whether my parents changed the channel or the channel changed itself to the news, where first thing I see an airplane hitting the World Trade Center. And I'm like, wait, what am I looking at? Is this real? Like my body just literally just froze. And I was like, I didn't even know what to comprehend. I didn't even know what to say, but little what do I know, just a couple hours later, I was like, yep, 2 towers got attacked, the Pentagon got attacked, and one of the planes plunged into the ground. So, Steve, where exactly were you on September 11th, 2001?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, man, always remember those who lost their lives in one of the worst terrorist attacks on American soil. Always remember those who lost their lives trying to save others. I was in my living room, actually. I had just woken up. I had gone to the kitchen to grab some coffee. I grabbed a copy of the Seattle PI. I was more of a PI guy, not a Times guy. And
I think many people were at this point.
Yeah, no, I turned on the TV because that, back in the day, that was the morning routine. I'd turn on the TV and turn on the news. I'm sitting there reading the paper, drinking my coffee, and I look over, and all of a sudden I see an airplane fly into the World Trade Center, and everything just stopped. You know what I mean? Like, it was something that I thought at first I thought it was, I thought it was like a rendering or something like that. Like, maybe it's like one of those things, like, like not necessarily staged, but like what happened if somebody, flew a plane into the World Trade Center or something like that. Cause maybe there was a threat of a terrorist attack. I didn't know what to think. All I just knew is I was watching a plane fly into the World Trade Center. And, of course, everything was dropped. I turned up the volume and I'm sitting there listening to it. And all of a sudden the first, another plane crashes into another one. And all of a sudden they just come down. And I just, I was literally in shock. I had never, I had never thought anything like that would be possible. You hear about the United States, Defense Department, and some of the things that they do, to make sure that nobody can attack our homeland. You hear about how, airspace is protected, and you just don't think anything like that could be humanly possible. Like, I remember, growing up, studying the Civil War and studying some of the major wars that the United States has been on, and my mind couldn't comprehend. I couldn't comprehend being in those veteran shoes, going overseas and fighting to protect. And then all of us, dude, I just, you just can't comprehend it. And then all of a sudden one day, somebody flies a plane into the World Trade Centers. And whatever the reasoning was, man, whatever Al Qaeda's reasoning was, it's still, it's still messed up, man. I mean, it's one thing, I'll just say this, man. It's one thing to harbor resentment and animosity towards the United States, but it's another thing to take a life of somebody that you didn't know, that did absolutely nothing to you, whose only crime was the fact that they were born in the United States. And more than 3,000 lives were taken, including the first responders who went in, not understanding what was going to happen, and lost their lives as the second tower came down. So, yeah, that's the thing. It's like, one of the beautiful things about that happened because of 9/11, for the rest of 2001, the United States came together as a country. I don't know if you remember it, but I remember distinctively driving down the streets and seeing the American flag on people's cars. I saw a lot of houses hanging the red, white, and blue. And for that beautiful moment, man, this country united, and united under one cause. And that was such a beautiful moment. And I think as the years have gone by since 2001, I think we've forgotten a little bit of that. But never, ever forget what happened on that morning on September 11th, because it radically changed the course of this country moving forward. But still, this is a day of remembrance. This is a day of prayer, and it's a day to reflect and understand that we're so incredibly fortunate to be in one of the greatest countries on the face of the earth. So yeah, I just remember that morning very vividly, man. It was something that I had never experienced before, and something that I hope we never have to experience again.
I agree, and everything was well said on those statements about what happened on September 11th, 2001, and also September 11th, 2012, because that's also not that I want to go too much in detail, but September 11th, 2012 was another 9/11 that also happened, which also should not be forgotten.
The American embassy in Benghazi.
American Embassy in Benghazi, and just a brief thing before we go into Mariners baseball. It was the attack on the embassy, and this was months when Chris Stevens, the ambassador, he was warning the White House and Secretary of State, not going to say names because I don't want YouTube to take a trap on me, but he was warning them that there was going to be a terrorist attack. There was a lot of red flags in the area. Everything was ignored. Then the attacks happened. Chris Stevens died pretty much immediately. And then all the guards and all the armed men were trying to just protect as much as they could, and they had very limited supply and weapons. So there was a possible call for the military to intervene, and they were all ready to go. Like, and when I was watching the 13 Hours movie, there were soldiers in the airplane, they were playing cards, and they were looking confused, like, hey, what's going on? Because they needed an authorization from the Secretary of State and or the president. I know I have to be careful with that. But there was no authorization. And because of that, that's where it was left to basically 4 men trying to just basically open fire whatever they could. And luckily, most of those fighters survived, and the attack ended the next day. So it was God-given miracle that it did not go longer than I thought it would have. So that's what happened.
I don't know what it's like to be the president in those situations, right? Or the Secretary of State in those situations, understanding that everything is happening in real time and it's, basically second by second, and that, those decisions that you have to make, but that being said, it's American taxpayer property, man. It's an embassy, you know what I mean? And you have an ambassador, and that, the lives of Americans, regardless of whether they're on the homeland or abroad, man, the American lives have to take precedent over whatever decision. And that was, I hate to say it, man, but it was a massive failure. It
was. And again, condolences to everyone from 2001 and 2012. But now we go back to Mariners baseball. And for anyone that was listening to all those messages, I totally appreciate it. But here we are, Mariners baseball. What happened yesterday as the Mariners dropped a big one to the San Diego Padres, and it was a critical game because the Mariners actually had to win just to break even, at least on the Twins. But the Twins won, so that means Mariners had to win to break even. They lost. But the good news is out of that game, or those games, the Houston Astros lost, so at least the division's kind of hanging in there, and this was thanks to Daz Cameron, son of Mike Cameron. It seems that he has noticed about the Mariners, and he's trying to fight for the Mariners because Daz Cameron made an amazing game-saving catch in extra innings, and he laid down a bunt that started the whole scoring massacre against the Astros. So, dare guys say it, like father, like son. It seems that Mike Cameron's like, hey, son, you got to help my old team win the standings. And, well, you know, Daz Cameron does it. But the Mariners lose 7-2.
Yeah.
And it was exciting at first because when the game started, I was like, I was sleepy because I had a morning workout at like 6 a.m. because I'm trying to lose weight. Then I worked. Then I come home and I'm covering this game and I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a long game just because of my physical conditions. And then Cal Raleigh hits a home run. Luke Raley hits a home run. I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's keep it going. But then Mariners failed to score after that. And then George Kirby just completely lost it. He left a couple pitches hanging literally right smack down the middle, because that is literally George Kirby's weakness. I do think that his refusal to walk is also his weakness, because some of those non-walks that he does pitch, it unfortunately turns into a home run. And then disasters happen more with bases loaded that Julio Rodriguez had, hits into a weak double play. And some concerns I saw out of that was, out of Julio Rodriguez, there was a play where he should have bunted with men on first and second, and there was like nobody out. He didn't even lay down a bunt, and I think he struck out or he grounded out.
Well,
and there was another.
Let me ask you really something. In that situation, do you really want to take the bat out of Julio Rodriguez's hands? I mean, because really, when you're bunting, that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking the bat out of his hands, right? So you're moving runners up. Okay, you're going to move runners up in scoring position, but after Julio Rodriguez, you have Cal Raleigh, and I understand Cal hit the home run in the first inning. I get all that. But we've already established that Cal Raleigh is feast or famine. You know, he's not the guy who's going to give you that clutch single when you need one, right? So he's either going to hit a massive bomb somewhere, or he's going to strike out. So in that situation, even with 2 on with nobody out, are you still going to take the bat out of Julio Rodriguez's hands with a bunt? I mean, granted, he's got the speed, so maybe he beats it out depending on where the bunt goes.
I still would have rolled the dice with the speed of Julio Rodriguez. And that's if the man hustles, because what I saw when the bases were loaded, and I think it was like the bottom of the 7th inning, he had a weak double play. And the thing that bothered me, like, I didn't really see much of a sprinting at all from Julio, because there are times where it just seems, now maybe I'm just crazy, but when there is like a weak ground ball, it seems that there are times where he just gives up on the play. And clearly, I see that from Randy Arozarena too, because when something doesn't go his way, he gives up, especially when he got thrown out at second base, which was an easy stolen base opportunity. He just gave up. Like, he didn't even make a slide. So some of those lack of hustles have to be addressed.
It's kind of interesting, right? Because Julio in his rookie year was hustling all the time, right? He was hustling down the first baseline all the time. And now we're in year 3. And it seems like the hustle is, it seems like the hustle is like only when he wants to. You know what I mean? Like, and I wonder if that is because, superstar Julio Rodriguez. You know what I mean?
Instagram flash boy Julio Rodriguez.
Yeah. I wonder if it's because of that. But, I mean, in that situation, like, I try to put myself in the situation of Dan Wilson. And I'm like, okay, well, like, do I really have the balls to ask Julio to drop down a bunt? Something that we really have not seen Julio do in his Mariner tenure. Like, we don't really know if Julio can bunt. You know what I mean? That's the one thing we don't know. We know Victor Robles can do it. We know that.
Oh, he bunts beautifully.
Yeah, and we know that Luke Raley can bunt as well too. But that's the one unknown. We don't know if Julio Rodriguez can do it because we haven't asked him to do something like that. And the other thing is, like, will he actually do it? Like, if Dan Wilson tells the third base coach to relay the sign into Julio Rodriguez to drop a bunt, is he going to do it? Or is he just going to swing away regardless? But that said, under normal circumstances, yeah, I do tend to agree with you, but it's kind of a risky, it's kind of a risky ask to drop a bunt. It's kind of a risky ask.
Yeah, but with a stretch like this, there are times where you just have to take risk. And I mean, because it was a situation, because Julio wasn't hitting well. That's why I wanted that bunt. Yeah.
I'll say this, right? We are now in the portion of the schedule where it is now a sprint to the finish line, and everything has to be done correctly. All decisions have to be smart. And I will say this, because you have to take it on a game by game basis. Every situation matters even more. And I also think back to, because you and I have talked about the residual rub-off effect that Lou Piniella had on Dan Wilson. Okay. And Lou Piniella probably would have asked Julio to drop one. You know what I mean? And in that situation, because it matters and every situation matters, and you're trying to keep momentum going and you're trying to put the team in a position to be better equipped to score a run, especially with no outs. More than, now that I think about it, now that I actually had, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, I kind of tend to agree with you. It makes a little bit more sense, especially because Julio this week wasn't all that great. I mean, I think this week Julio was 9 for 34 this week. He had 2 extra base hits, a double and a dinger. Wasn't really, wasn't particularly flashy. And I think in that, now that I agree with it. I think I might lean more with you than letting him swing away.
Hey, it was okay to disagree initially, at least, but I didn't ask for you to agree with me anyway. But hey,
no, I know. But in the moment, the first thing I'm like, why would you take the bat out of Julio's hands? But now that now that I'm just kind of like, now that I think about everything in a vacuum, I'm like, you know what, that actually makes a lot of sense.
It was only situational. Like if he was like 2 for 2 or like 1 for 2 or however he was doing, then I'd been like, yeah, sure, swing away. But in a situation where the Mariners were having difficulties just to get on base because the only legitimate hits they really got was Cal Raleigh and Luke Raley home runs, and they were pretty much by accident. They were just oopsie little pitches by Yu Darvish. But other than that, Yu Darvish was just absolutely just dominating the Mariners, unfortunately. And on the other side, the pitching, George Kirby, he did not pitch all that great, and he's not been doing that well in the second half. And start of the season, I said that George Kirby was going to be the ace of the team. Like he kind of pretty much was the ace last season, but he hasn't really shown it this season.
And I think I went above and beyond and said that Logan Gilbert was probably going to end up being the ace, and he's kind of been pitching like it. I'll say this about George, right? And this is what kind of gets me upset, because the Mariners staked him to basically a 2-run lead going into the third. He's in a position where he can relax a little bit. He doesn't feel like he needs to be perfect, right? He can attack the strike zone a little bit more, knowing that he's got a 2-run lead. He can be a little bit more aggressive. Now, that being said, because George relies heavily on his fastball, if you're going to throw it, that your control has to be, pinpoint. So if you're going to throw your fastball, then it's going to be up in the zone in a situation where you're going to induce a little bit more swing and miss. And I didn't think that his control was very good. I didn't think his fastball control was good last night. I certainly didn't think his control of his off speed. There were times where he was missing badly with his location. And against a team like San Diego, man, you can't mess around with San Diego. They got dudes in their lineup that can make you pay. And unfortunately, George gives up 5 on 7 yesterday, and it's it's a problem, right? Like the Mariners could have built off that momentum, off that early 2-run lead, and who knows how that could have played out. But top of the third, George gives up 3. And at that point, the Mariners are still in it. But they come back and the Padres come back in the 6th and 7th. And Austin Voth also gets charged with 2 runs out of the bullpen. It just overall was not a good pitching performance yesterday. And that's and that was a little disconcerting, considering for the rest of this week the Mariners were actually very good. I thought starting pitching wise over the course of the week, I thought the Mariners were actually very excellent when it came to the starting their starting pitching. Their bullpen, not so much. But when you get that offensive output that the Mariners got this week, even yesterday getting 3, you would like to think that the Mariners easily could have built off that, but George had it rough yesterday, and it's actually a stark contrast to his start in Oakland. Oakland, say what you will about them, they also had guys in their lineup that can make you pay too. And I thought George's performance in Oakland earlier this week was
he dominated with 9 strikeouts, and
100%. It's just when you don't have your control, and you're, that's, what's funny because we did an interview with Jeff Facero.
Yeah,
and Jeff was saying, man, that in moments where you don't have your best stuff, you really do have to try your best to pitch to contact because you have a defense behind you that are going to be able to make plays, right? So in that moment, you have to be able to understand the situation and understand that, what, I don't necessarily have the guy. I have to be the guy to blow you away with 9 to 12 strikeouts. You know what I mean? You can pitch some ground ball outs, right? You can do your best to to put the game in your defense's hands. And I just think that George was trying to do too much, man.
He is doing too much, and I think Jeff Facero even laid out a good point too, that even in situations where, for a guy like George Kirby, who's basically allergic to doing walks, even Jeff was like, you could walk a guy once in a while. Because I remember that Manny Machado home run when it was still 3-2 and the Mariners were still competitive. I was like, I think maybe you should just take the bat away from him, let him go to first base, because there was a guy already at second base, and I was thinking, well, why not set up an opportunity for
first base is open.
Why not set up an opportunity for double play? And then George Kirby was getting 2 strikes on him. I was like, okay, if you insist. And then a home run happened. So I think the negligence of the willingness to walk Manny Machado kind of hurt.
You know what's funny? It's the walk. It's the walk without telegraphing that you're trying to walk the guy, right? So if you're going to be running fastballs on the outside corner, you're not necessarily going to be throwing at 100% max velocity. Maybe it's going to be 80%, and you're going to be, you're going to be dancing on the outside corner. Or if you're going to go inside with a fastball, it's going to be up and in. You know what I mean? You're not necessarily throwing it to induce the swing and miss, but you're trying to be. You're trying to walk a guy without, telegraphing that you're trying to walk a guy, right? Instead of just having like a 4-pitch, an automatic walk down the first base. You're not necessarily trying to pitch to contact. You're not necessarily trying to pitch for the K, man. You're going to walk a guy without really attacking the strike zone. Like there's ways around it. And I 100% agree with you. There are definitely times in mid game, in the early portion of a game, where there's times where you go after a guy like Manny Machado, especially if there's nobody on. In those circumstances, yeah, you're gonna try to blow 99 past him on the upper portion of the strike zone. But with a runner in scoring position, first base open, and I believe Jake Cronenworth was hitting right behind him. Jake Cronenworth does not light the world on fire. As a matter of fact, if you're not throwing fastball in and out over the plate, that's a dude that sometimes comes over the top. It's not unthinkable to induce Jake Cronenworth into a ground ball double play. 100% I agree with you.
Yep. So I think that was just a lack of strategy there by George Kirby, because he's a young man trying to be the hero. And I was like, no, you can take him to first base. Yeah, but we just needed that double play, because that was what Jeff Facero did. There are times where he let someone get to first base, and then next thing you know, he pitches into a double play with that forkball or that sinker he has.
Yeah, and George has got a pretty good change as well too, man. He can induce ground ball outs. Like it's not out of the realm of possibility to see that actually happening. And I wonder if that was on George Kirby, was that on Dan Wilson? Because you have to figure there's how many coaches that are in the dugout? 4 or 5.
It is usually the coach's call to do that. Yeah. It is coach's call
So you have like what, 8 to 10 pairs of eyes on the situation. You're just wondering if,
and all of them kind of ignored it. They kind of downplayed because they thought they could. I thought George Kirby was doing just fine on Manny Machado, but then he hit 2 for 5. So, but even then, even if he was struggling, and even with that situation where you're down 3-2, you don't want to give them an opportunity to
break
the score.
Open.
And even let's say Cronenworth hit the home run to extend that lead even further, I still would have. I'll eat my words and say, nope, that was the correct decision. But I was wrong, but I thought it was the correct decision. Just didn't work out. But so there are times where I'm going to say they should have done that. But if it didn't work out, I'd be like, okay, fine. But it was still the right decision. So it's not, it's okay.
But also, let's just say that Cronenworth hits single. You know what I mean? And a run scores. You still have Xander Bogaerts hitting behind him. There's still a scenario where it plays out where either A, you get the ground ball double play, or B, you come back against the next hitter, Xander Bogaerts, and you get out of the inning with only just one.
Yeah, because Bogaerts hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire with that contract either.
That's exactly right. So, that's the thing. It's the ability to play 2D chess or 3D chess, and you always have to be thinking 2 or 3 batters ahead, understanding what's in front of you, and understanding that you don't necessarily have to be the guy. That's also a big thing this year as well too, man. It's just a lot of these guys are trying to play hero ball, and it's like, you have a team, like you have guys on this team that are equally just as capable of getting outs, making plays. And, and I wonder if that's just George Kirby's inexperience, right? He's only been in the league, 2 years, 3 years?
This is his second full season.
Second full season, right? So, I mean, it's like understanding there's a difference between pitching and throwing, right? And understanding, when it's the opportune time to attack and when it's time to let your defense make plays. Dude, I agree. This is the second time we've agreed this show. I 100% agree with you, man. Especially with first base open, man. You would rather play for the double play. But if you're going to attack a dude, like Manny Machado, you better have control. And that was really the long and short of George Kirby's outing yesterday. Just not enough control.
No, he just kept leaving them hanging. So that's the funny part about George Kirby. Other pitchers, we may have complained that in the past where they have absolutely no control in the strike zone, like Andres Munoz has trouble with his strike zone, but George Kirby has problems on where to exactly pitch because he does have a great ability of not walking, but it does come at the cost of there's a home run given up. Same thing with Luis Castillo. Yeah. He doesn't walk often, but he gives up home runs. Even I think Bryce Miller may have that issue too. Like, I think that's the entire starting rotation. They all have home run problems because they don't walk. One of those pitches are bound to hit that strike zone in the perfect way for a hitter to blast a home run.
Yeah, and when you look over the course of this last week, Castillo gave up 2 homers to Oakland. Brian Wu gave up a shot. Logan gave up. Who probably had the best start of the week, going 8, did give up the 2-run home run. That ended up being the difference. And then Kirby yesterday giving up a couple shots. So you're absolutely right, man. As good as it is, this rotation is definitely susceptible to the long ball.
It is very prone,
what's Kevin Kirby talking about, Aaron Judge?
Yeah, let's as much as I agree with you, we should probably focus on the Padres series first. Texas is not going to be an easy camper either, which is why I wanted to get the next thing I wanted to get into is the standings and what is to look forward to, because we got, or maybe we shall, let's get the Padres game out of the way since we're already talking Padres. But the Padres for today, which is going to be tonight, and I am hoping to cover this game as well because...
Oh, never mind. Yeah, no, I was wondering, it's like, we don't have the Yankees on the schedule. Yeah, we do.
Next week we do.
Yeah, we do.
I'm not even ready to talk Yankees yet, but Brian Wu is pitching today against, what's his name? King? I think I have him on my... Michael King. He is 8-3 on the road, it looks like. He's 12-8 with a 3.10 ERA. So this one's also not going to be an easy game. I mean, none of these games are easy. Even with 5+ ERAs, they still manage a way to screw it up. But with Brian Woo's 7-2 record, he's actually he might actually be the best starter in the rotation in Brian Woo. But he has given up 10 home runs, 9 walks, 77 strikeouts. And the odds are saying that the Padres are actually the favorites to win this game. So anything we shall be aware of for this game?
Well, what's interesting is, Michael King has been around for a while. He's a guy who, really depends on his sinker and changeup. He will mix in a 4-seam fastball, has the sweeper as well too. And when you kind of look at his last couple starts, man, he went 6 against the Giants, was pretty effective. Against the Cardinals, I think he went 4 1/3, gave up 2 runs on 7 hits. He was pretty effective against the Mets, was pretty effective against the Twins as well too. So, his last 3 starts have been pretty good. And I know, the Mariners have success against King, as Kevin Kirby pointed out down there in the chat. So it's not like we're unfamiliar with King. And it's going to be the exact same recipe as we started yesterday's game. Getting out in front, getting a couple runs early, and giving Brian Woo an opportunity to be in a position where he can relax and attack the strike zone without having to feel perfect. So I would like to see the same start. But what I like about Brian Woo, especially in his last start with Oakland, he had very good, command and control of his fastball. I've said it so many times. I think I've said it so many times to the point of repeating myself, but I really do believe he's got the best fastball in this rotation. That thing grades out to an 80+ fastball. When it comes to movement, when it comes to velocity, his understanding of when to throw it versus his off-speed pitches. Brian Woo, I like this matchup. Because I actually think Brian Woo matches up pretty well against the San Diego Padres. Last night notwithstanding. So I think the pitching matchup favors the Mariners, but it's also going to be, just how aggressive the Mariners offense is going to be against King. So to me, that's going to be the key to the game, is getting out early and making King pay, because King is not, he has tendencies, man. He has a tendency to walk a little bit, has a tendency to give up the long ball as well too. So I mean, I like this matchup for the Mariners.
Let's hope you are right. And for Brian Woo, and what I have seen from him, he's actually gone at least 7 innings 3 times since the start of August. So his longevity has improved. Looks like the health has improved. 100% knock on wood on that one, because he's had known to have the longevity issues, which is why I am conflicted on whether the Mariners should trade him at the end of the season to get a huge bat, or to just keep him in because he might be the future. But I don't know, because his injury red flags had shown even before his draft. So that's why I'm still nervous about Brian Woo, but at least for this season, we'll see.
Well, here's the thing, right? And I know that, Mariners Twitter went on fire after Ryan Divish went on the Marine Layer podcast and was saying that they're going to end up trading one of their starters. And I know he mentioned Logan Gilbert's name. But that being said, if that is a situation where we're trading a starter to grab a bat, it probably would have to start and end with Luis Castillo. Oh,
it's got to be Luis Castillo, because he's got that. Yeah, his contract is becoming much more worthless. But the reason why Logan Gilbert might be traded along with George Kirby is because they're entering arbitration year, so their prices are going to go up.
Right, but I mean, you're talking about Castillo right now is making what, 22?
He's getting up there in price. And actually, I actually got the contract up there for Luis Castillo. He's going into $24 million. So I know that, and even with great ownership, I still trade him. I
think that Luis Castillo still has a no trade clause. I think through this upcoming offseason. But that being said, you're going to have interested parties. And if it's like the Dodgers, Padres, Mets, Yankees, it's like, dude, those teams, even the Braves, right? So you would think that there's going to be interest from some of the better, from the better teams around the league. And it's like, if there's trade interest, I would probably assume that but Luis Castillo would waive his no trade clause in order to make that deal. Because to me, it doesn't make any sense. And this was the whole Paul Sewald thing all over again, where it's like the reasoning behind they traded him is because that, he was going to start to get expensive next year. It's like, okay, we'll finish the season with him and then trade him in the offseason. If it's not going to be that big of a deal. And then the reasoning behind, Logan Gilbert was because he's about to come into arbitration. Well, even if he gets an arbitration raise and it's $12 to $15 million, that's still considerably cheaper to carry, at least for one more year, than a dude who's making $24 million, who's not the ace of the staff. I would rather carry arbitration eligible Logan Gilbert. Right. And I know Kevin Kirby's here would say, he would rather trade Kirby than anything else. I'm in that situation where I would definitely think about George Kirby before Logan Gilbert. I would think about Bryce Miller before I'd think about
anyone else.
George Kirby. But that being said, though, Brian Wu and Bryce Miller still aren't arbitration eligible. They still have 2 more years before they become arbitration eligible as well, too. So, from that standpoint and from club control, that makes a lot of sense. But, as far as I'm concerned, man, like the idea of trading Logan Gilbert, who is our all-star this year, who in my opinion is the actual ace of the staff. It makes absolutely no sense to trade him, even if he is arbitration eligible, versus a guy like Luis Castillo, who is hot, who runs hot and cold. And it's inconsistent from start to start. And he's inconsistent from start to start. So, I mean, if we're talking about trading a starter for a bat, it starts and ends with Luis Castillo. And, Castillo will waive his no trade clause if he knows for a fact he's going to a playoff team. The question is return. And the question is this going to be a situation where, Jerry Dipoto trades a dude like him for, 3 prospects who are blocked at the major league level, or is he actually
hands zone?
You know what I mean? It's like, that's the big problem for me. It's like, I don't trust, Jerry Dipoto at all when it comes to bringing in bats. No one should. And that's why I didn't want his contract extended. I thought it made absolutely no sense to do it. And the fact that they are already saying it without a threat of him getting fired. So basically he's being treated like, no offense, a tenured teacher where unlimited job security that Jerry Dipoto seems to have. And what's been really carrying his job is that farm system. And if he did anything less than building the farm system, he would have been gone years ago. But instead, name a bat that he's brought from 2021, from 2021 through this day. Okay. Name a bat that he's either signed or traded.
You can't.
Traded for that turned out to be legit. I think I can only name one. And he was the guy that he traded this offseason to Arizona. Eugenio
Suarez. Jesse Winker was at least decent. I think people downplayed him as much as they should have. Like he wasn't great, but he was still a clutch guy.
Like in his one season, that dude got off to a slow start, and then it really kind of spiraled. There was a reason why he was left off the playoff roster. A lot of it had to do with clubhouse issues, but also he just didn't have the season that was expected. But that's the thing. It's like Adam Kennedy, Adam Frazier. I thought he ended the season fantastic, man. I really did.
Frazier, Carlos Santana.
Carlos Santana, that's another one that ended up performing pretty well here. But he's had more misses than he's had successes, right? And when you look at some of the moves that he made that are complete head scratchers, Paul Sewald, Gino Suarez,
Jared Kelenic.
The Jared Kelenic deal, also the Robbie Ray deal.
Robbie
So
Ray deal is not looking good at all.
I don't think, I still think that it was fine not extending the qualifying offer to Teoscar because I didn't want him back at a $20 million price point. But whatever, man. Notwithstanding, that's my whole thing. Is it's like if we're going to trade a starting pitcher, okay, fine.
But make sure the return is legitimate.
Yeah, like that's the thing. It's like, dude, if we're trading you our quote unquote ace, I want an all-star back in return.
And I don't want to hear anything from Jerry DePoe going, well, we couldn't find anyone in return. I'm like, sell it to him. You're a salesman. That's the job of a general manager. You got to sell the idea. Just like George Steinbrenner, along with his GM, he sold the idea that Russ Davis and Sterling Hitchcock were going to be the futures of a third baseman and a starting pitcher to complement Randy Johnson. That's what was sold to Woody Woodward, and he fell for it. Well, granted that it was more of a cost-cutting move anyway, but still, the point is set on that. And to go to Kevin Kerr, because I think we're pretty much done with this whole Padres thing.
Yeah.
Let's sign Santander. I'm pretty sure the Mariners don't even know who that is. What about Teoscar Hernandez? He's not coming back to the Mariners because he hates T-Mobile Park for whatever weird reason. And I will say,
what's funny? I actually wouldn't mind having Teoscar back because he's not in a Scott Service offense, right? So he
has Edgar Martinez to mentor him.
Yeah, there's a difference. There's a difference between philosophies of Scott Service and the whole launch angle, whatever. And then Dan Wilson, who's essentially simplified everything to the point where if it's straight and you can see it, swing at it. But that being said, the problem with bringing a guy like Teoscar Hernandez back to Seattle now in free agency, coming off this season with the Dodgers,
his price tag's going up.
That price tag is going to go up.
And the Mariners ownership is not going to touch him.
Yeah. Somebody mentioned bringing
Trevor Bauer.
Well, no, they also, the Berg show says, they should have brought back Mike Ford. And it's like, come on, man. No. I know
he's fun to watch.
I know he had a somewhat decent year last year.
16 homers in limited time.
But no, that dude can't run. That dude can't play first base. And that dude strikes out so much, man. Give me Trevor Bauer and Juan Soto, 100%.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Even Trevor Bauer, because on an ownership perspective, if you just look at money, it makes way too much sense. The guy will be insanely cheap because he is heavily undervalued because of the baggage, which, by the way, most of it was not even his fault.
You can sign Trevor Bauer to a 1-year, $1 million deal with incentives, right? Where it's not like you can cap the incentives like at $5 or $8 million, right? If he matches it. But the thing with Juan Soto, it's like, dude, back the Brinks truck up to that man's front door, right? And if you have to give him 10 years at $450 million, because it's going to be something stupid like that.
You know what?
Then you do it.
Why don't you just do the Shohei Ohtani deal?
Well, I'll tell you why. Because the player actually has to want that.
Oh, yeah. Well, because Ohtani, he has Shohei
Ohtani was willing to do it because it's the Dodgers. It's the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers had that credibility and they had a little bit of that leverage where they can actually negotiate those type of contracts where he's only making $2 million during the season, but everything is deferred. So he can get paid, for another 20 years down the road. Soto wants 10 years at $600 million. So what? You give it to
not my money. I don't even give. It's not. I don't even go to the games.
I think Soto's like 25, 26 years old right now, and
he'll still be effective.
Right. It's like you're going like on a 10-year deal for Juan Soto. You're going to get productivity for at least another 5.
It's still going to be more effective than the Robinson Cano deal where they signed him just at the tail end of his prime.
That's the thing. It's like why do you think I wanted the Mariners to trade for Soto this last offseason? Because even in a vacuum for 1 year, it would absolutely change the trajectory of this franchise where it sends a message throughout Major League Baseball that the Mariners are willing to pay. You know what I mean? That's the biggest reason why free agents don't come to Seattle, because they know that the Mariners will not pay.
They won't pay. And I don't want
They
to hear
won't
the
pay.
T-Mobile Park excuse because there
like,
are players
it's
that made it
bullshit.
work.
No,
I think it's the most stupid argument ever. It's
like one of the most bullshit stereotypes out there that they don't like to hit at T-Mobile Park. It's like, dude, that's been debunked many times over. The reality of the situation is the Mariners do not pay in free agency, and that's not an ownership issue. It's not an ownership issue. It's a Jerry DiPoto issue because it's his philosophy, and that's been made public a few times, where he does not want to bring in long-term contracts because it does not give him roster flexibility. He's all about roster flexibility. Because if you give a guy a 5-year contract, a 6-year contract, and he could only play one position, it doesn't give you much roster flexibility. And of course, he doesn't like long-term deals because as the deal keeps going on, it's devalued, and there's not a lot of trade value.
Let's go into the comments before we jump into injuries, which we'll probably touch for a brief, and then we're going to talk about standings and what's to look forward to before we cut this off.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
The show is, that's awesome. I like that.
I like the name. Cal Raleigh will eventually be a Red Sox. He grew up idolizing Veritek. I mean, anything's possible because he's already fed up with his ownership. Kevin Kirby thinks, do you think a cap space should be harder in baseball? I see it's right. I just see how it's right. Dodgers have 3 MVPs. Well, here's the other thing. Other teams, they don't have as much as the passion of ownership as the Dodgers do. So, and here's the thing. The Dodgers, for the most part, are a perennial first-round loser anyway. So Dodgers, and here's the thing. I'm not saying don't spend money, but Dodgers spend everything they could, but they have problems with their manager, Dave Roberts, who's basically National League Scott Service, which is why at one point I wanted the Mariners and the Dodgers to play in the World Series with Scott Service and Dave Roberts, just so I can say, this is the battle of the idiots.
What's funny is, like, do I think Major League Baseball should have a salary cap? Yes, but will it ever happen? No. The union will not agree to it. But I will say that it's true that in some context you can't buy a World Series. Like the only time that I think I seen a World Series being bought was the 2009 Yankees.
That was legit bought because
that was legit bought. And you can say the Dodgers in 2020, but I think that was, the COVID year. I don't really count the COVID year.
Most of their players were still were from the farm. They didn't even have Freddie Freeman.
I think you can also agree that one of the Astros championships were also bought as well too. So there is something to it where it's not going to happen every year, because since the Dodgers won their COVID championship, they've doubled down and still haven't been able to progress in the playoffs, right? And more oftentimes than not, those teams that try to overspend, we saw it last year with the Mets and the Padres, didn't even make the playoffs. But I will say this. Obviously, that was the exception, not the rule. But when you look at the top 10 in baseball in spending every single year, and this has been the case for a decade now, chances are there's a reason why every single year those teams that spend in the top 10 are in the playoffs. Now, it's not going to guarantee you a championship,
World Series,
but it will guarantee you that you'll be in the dance at the end of the year.
Well, I wanted to, before we get into the standings, I know I already said this, but maybe let's go since 2010.
Cal's not going to resign.
He's not, because Scott Boras won't let him. 2010 Giants, that was a little bit of that was homegrown. 2011 Cardinals, they kind of already had players in their core, but they did buy into Lance Berkman. 2012 Giants was pretty much the same thing. So it's still a rarity to see, like, Red Sox was kind of homegrown.
Yeah,
Giants homegrown.
You'll see the Rays get in the playoffs. I know that you saw the A's a couple times in the last 10 years got to the playoffs with a short payroll. Yeah, don't get me wrong, man. You have those outliers that'll make the playoffs. But generally speaking, again, when you look at the top 10 in spending, those teams generally seem to find themselves in the playoffs every year.
So yeah, I mean, and then the crazy thing is too is that it's not like we're asking necessarily for the Mariners to like go broke like Bill Bavasi did. We're just asking for just that one or two little bit of mid-level players that could actually get you to the top.
Yeah, imagine if we had $20 more million in payroll. I mean, that's not a lot, right? I think right now it's somewhere in the 150, somewhere right now in the 150s. Right, the total team payroll right now. Just imagine it. Imagine $20 more million, and now all of a sudden you're kind of like mid-tier. You're kind of like right in the middle of the pack when it comes to total team spending. The flexibility that will give the Mariners, right? But my biggest issue is because Jerry Dipoto is going to be back next year, and he's probably going to be on the hottest of hot seats, man. Like I have a feeling we'll see what we saw this last offseason, where he's going to break it up. You know what I mean? And he's going to do something radical, like trade Logan Gilbert or whatever the case may be, and then all of a sudden it derails whatever momentum we have this year. It's going to be like, dude, it's going to be worse next year. And that's the thing. It's like if you're going to do that, then just go ahead and trade Cal Raleigh. Go ahead and trade George Kirby and Logan Gilbert, and just blow it up, man.
Blow it up. But the thing is, that's going to give Jerry Dipoto a few more years, because they're going to say, okay, I'll give you one more chance to.
Yeah. Well, I have dude, he's on the hottest of hot seats, right? And we had now found out that it was leaked, that the whole Scott Service thing got leaked prior to Dipoto telling Scott Service, right? So that came from ownership, man. Right? So they've already circumnavigated his management. When ownership starts doing that to its own president of baseball operations, and they circumnavigate his leadership and his management and his authority, that's the writing is on the wall. So I would probably assume that, yeah, they give him 2025, and he's got to get this team into the playoffs by hook or crook, which means we're probably going to see some fireworks this offseason.
Well, personally, I have a very easy advice for John Stanton. Just get rid of him.
Yeah. I do. Like Kevin Curry is like, do you think the Dipoto might try to spend a lot more money knowing he's? I do. I 100%.
Think so.
Like, because this is the exact same thing with Jack Zaremczyk. During Jack Zaremczyk's last year, that offseason going into his last year, knowing that he was on the hot seat,
they finally spent the money.
He tried to spend some money to shore up the pitching staff. He tried, and of course it didn't work out, and he got fired, right? And Jerry Dipoto's not a dumb guy. Like a lot of people think that 100% Bergs get Theo Epstein. A lot of people think that Jerry Dipoto isn't necessarily all that smart of a guy. He's 100% smart, and he's also perceptive, and he knows, man. He just had to fire his best friend because of results, and those results are on him because he's the dude that builds the thing. He built this team. He has to know that he's on the hot seat. And so this is like, do you remember what happened to Jack Zaremczyk? He didn't even last his final year. He got fired in season. And if this team does not start hot in 2025, and it starts the way that we've seen it over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, and by the All-Star break, if they have any semblance of the collapse that they had this year, that dude's gone.
Absolutely gone. Now, little thing to touch on the injuries, even though I really just want to talk about it brief, is that Jimmy Garcia's out for the season.
Yeah.
And Luis Castillo, we already kind of talked about it already. He's got a big contract, and he's injured until maybe the end of the season, which at this point, I don't even know if I want to put him as a postseason starter. Yeah. But Jimmy Garcia, he's going to be a free agent next season, and I don't expect the Mariners to extend a contract. But yeah, you're right. You never know. I hope they do, because got to make most out of that Jonathan Clase deal, because that was.
I'll just say that the Jimmy Garcia we've seen so far in a Mariners uniform isn't necessarily.
It's not the one that we know and love.
That's not the one that's been lights out. And I would like to think that that, you know, he's not going to command a multi-year deal in free agency. Jimmy Garcia is going to be that 1 year reliever type of guy where you'll see him sign a lot of 1 year deals throughout his career. And, you know, if you can get Jimmy Garcia back on an $8 million deal, it's worth it.
Let's hope they do, because I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Especially considering we get Matt Brash back next May.
Matt Brash, Jimmy Garcia, Andres Munoz, maybe Gregory Santos. Like, if they're all healthy, then that could be the bullpen to be a force to be reckoned with. Even though I still want a legitimate closer.
100%. By the way, Kevin Kirby says, does Billy Beane still work for the Athletics? No, he was the president of baseball operations, but he's also a minority owner.
He's a senior. He's an executive assistant to John Fisher.
Would he take a president of baseball operations job in Seattle?
Is he allowed to if he's already has stake in the A's though?
Yeah, I think so. Even if he's an owner, but why would he do that though?
He's not an idiot.
Job now? Has Castillo thrown his last pitch in a Mariners uniform? I hope so. We all hope so. So he gets injured in in his last start in St. Louis, correct? He only went 3 innings in that game.
Yep, it was cut short.
It was cut short, right? And so he's on the 15-day DL, retroactive to the 10th when they put him on, or is it? It
was around the 10th. Yeah, it was pretty much yesterday, and that's why Sebi Savala got called up, which was very unusual. I was kind of hoping they called up like Emerson Hancock, or at least even like the other guy, not Logan Gilbert. It's something Logan Evans.
Logan Evans. You would think that they would want another starter, right?
Yeah, but I think maybe they're trying to tighten it up, which I don't like, because
so they're going to go to with a 4-man rotation.
It seems, are they going to go with a bullpen day, which they better not do, because that's a way to lose the season, because that's what they did in 21 when they did all those ridiculous bullpen days, and they pretty much lost all of them.
By the way, who do the guy in the chat room, who are they referring to as The Rock? Is that Logan?
That's
Who's The Rock?
Luis Castillo is The Rock. Okay,
yeah. No, all right, fair enough. I haven't heard, you always hear La Piedra, but okay, so The Rock. The Rock. The Castillo, and by the way, he's not a rock at all. He's anything but a rock. Rocks are consistent. Castillo is anything but. So here's the thing about this, right? So he's retroactive to the 10th, which means that 15 days later, you're basically coming in the last series against the A's. So basically for the long and short of this one, you can also say that Castillo is probably going to be out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, he's pretty much gone.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on where we are in the standings, right? Because if the Mariners are still 4 games out with 4 to play, it's pretty much over. It means The Rock in English. Okay, well, whatever. So there's no need to bring him back at that point. I mean, if the Mariners are like 1 game out with 3 to play, 100%. Then it would actually make sense. But, that's the thing. It's like, has he thrown his last pitch? For me, if you're trading a starting pitcher, it starts with Luis Castillo. The guy that we got in the second half of 2022 as we were chasing down the playoffs, he's not that guy anymore.
I didn't even like him that much in 22 either.
He had an outing against the A's this week where he gave up 2 runs on 7, but he also gave up 2 home runs in that game. Like he is so susceptible to the long ball, and he still has those starts where he has the bad inning, where he gives up 3 to 5 runs in an inning. He still has that issue. In that start, I think it was against St. Louis. Yeah, he gave up 2 runs in 3 innings. I just feel like in this situation, I'd rather have that. But I'll say this: it's a little interesting, right, that they didn't call up Emerson Hancock. because I off the top of my head, I don't think that the Mariners have a guy in their bullpen even that can go 3 innings if you're going to
do a bullpen day.
If you're gonna throw a bullpen day, it makes absolutely no sense.
I think it's a waste to even do that.
Unless the reason why Emerson Hancock didn't get called up right away is because he's pitching either today or tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like if he's got to start like an imminent start where you're not going to call him up.
I guess we can check on that.
Do I think if the Mariners had Matt Brash this year that they make the playoffs? No.
No, there's no guarantees. And who is to say, and maybe Brash would have had the same problems, even healthy as last season, that drove me nuts.
I think the interesting thing about that is, like, don't get me wrong, I don't think they would have the bullpen issues that they have, but Matt Brash doesn't swing a bat. And that's the biggest reason why the Mariners are in this position, because their offense is just absolutely putrid.
Emerson hasn't pitched since September 6th, so maybe he was due for a start.
Maybe. Bird Show says Kirby is trash, keep the rock. I don't think so. Man.
No, I mean Kirby still has more upside. It's just
Kirby was an all-star last year, man.
It's all in Kirby's head. He's just got to figure out how not to let fastballs hang right up down the middle, giving up home runs. Let's
see. They probably would be in a wild card spot, but I don't think they would have made it just with Brash added. 100%. Maybe. The only good thing about Castillo is the strikeouts. His best start was Game 1 versus Toronto in wild card. Yeah, we're talking about a start that was 2 years ago, man.
2 years ago. Yeah.
That's a good question. Riley Perone. I'm sorry, man. Riley Perone asked a very good question, man. Who on the current roster do you guys think should not be here next year?
Let's save that question till the very end. But now we're going into the standings, and surprisingly, the Mariners they are still trailing just 4.5 games out of Houston, because Houston kind of started cooling off, but so the Mariners, they kind of stink the hole. And now in the wild card, and the wild card race is even uglier. And if you think the West is not fun to look at, wild card's also pretty bad. I mean, you've got Baltimore and Kansas City, which pretty much they've already sealed they pretty much got their spots locked in. And now it's just a matter of if Baltimore is going to be able to catch up to the Yankees. So that's a different issue. But Minnesota Twins, they're now 4 games back because the Mariners, they failed. And now the Tigers are ahead of the Mariners, and Boston's ahead. And so not only do you have to deal with Minnesota, you have to deal with racing against Boston and Detroit, which, by the way, you don't own a tiebreaker to them. Both of them.
The good news is that we're currently tied with the Red Sox. But yeah, you're right about the tiebreaker. And Detroit now is 3 games out. And by the way, Detroit's actually been playing pretty good baseball lately.
They have a young, exciting baseball team.
Yeah, over the last couple of weeks, man, Detroit's that gritty team, man. That's what I like about Detroit. Being out here in Michigan, of course, I've seen a lot of Tiger baseball. Are they perfect? Not even in the realm of possibility. They're not perfect. They still have issues that, me personally, I think the rotation is less than major league average, but they're doing the little things right to put themselves in a position to strike. The best path to the postseason is going to be that 3rd wildcard team, which means that you're going to have to leapfrog the Tigers to put themselves in that position. But the good news is that the Twins right now are not playing good baseball.
They're not.
Over the course of the last couple of weeks, the Twins they're not playing good baseball. But the problem with the Mariners is
they're not playing good baseball either.
Well, it's the inconsistency, right? Like this week, over the course of the last 7 games, they scored 2 runs against the A's, but then they bounced back with a 16-run effort, a 6-run effort, a 6-run effort, then a 10-run effort. This week they were essentially averaging 6 runs per game. That has to be a continuing trend if they're going to be able to pull this one off. Now, I'm not saying that the division's out of pocket either, because we're only 4.5 games out in the division, so that's still there. But one of the things that the Mariners have, in order for this to happen, okay, offensive consistency has to stay intact, which means that they're going to have to do the little things in order to scratch out runs. That's the first thing. But also, if they're really realistically going to pull this one, their bullpen has to be better. because
Bullpen
this
has to be
week,
better, and even the starters have to stop letting the fastball hang around.
I mean, it's fine. Like, here's the thing. I'm not really like, that's the thing. It's like, we've already covered the fact that this rotation is susceptible to the long ball, and I'm okay with the occasional solo shot. It is what it is. Sometimes, hitters hit good pitchers' pitches. But this week, Trent Thornton had a bad outing in Oakland. JT Chargois had a bad outing in Oakland. Giving up a run out of the bullpen. Munoz had a bad outing against Oakland as well too. I think he gave up 2 runs on the home run. Taylor had a bad outing against St. Louis. He gave up the long ball. Edward Bizzardo, again, I don't know why Bizzardo's on this roster, but he had a bad outing this week. And then Austin Voth last night. So that has to be that has to get cleaned up right away. That this bullpen we're what now, 2 weeks to the end of the season. And that, essentially 2 weeks, and that's it. Right. So Julio is going to Julio has to be Julio. Like, if there was a time for Julio to,
be 2023 August Julio, the time is now.
Yeah. The time is now. But also, over this week, I like the commutative effort. I think Randy Arozarena had a few good games. Cal Raleigh had a few good games, and especially in that little 4-game stretch where they were averaging 6+. It didn't seem like it was one guy it seemed like it was a commutative effort, especially in that 16 run. The whole bottom of the lineup pitched in and had a great game. So in order for this to happen, obviously we're going to need some help, but it starts with us cleaning up a few things. And that means Dan Wilson, I hate to say it, it's like Dan Wilson has to pick out 3 dudes in the bullpen. 3. And then stick with them. You know what I mean? Like, we have to have our starters go at least 6, and then 7, 8, 9. You have to take your 3 best relievers. And who are those right now? Like, if you had to rank them, like, who is the 3 best relievers right now from high leverage to a 7th inning guy?
By default, Andres Munoz is up there.
Okay.
Man, another one. I would even put Troy Taylor. Hot take, but Troy Taylor should be up there.
Okay. 2.
And then who else? Oh, Colin Snyder. So I think those are the top 3, because I really do think Troy Taylor does look like an up-and-coming guy. All
right, so there you go. And you stick with those 3. If you're in a situation where you're in a 2-run game, those are the 3 that you go to. And if you have to use them on back-to-back days, so what? And then you can pick and choose how you use the lefties in the bullpen. You can pick and choose that. But for the most part, it has to be those 3. And those 3 you're going to have to rely on to carry this bullpen. You can't be in a situation where you're using Thornton or you're using both. Unless they're getting blown out, then go ahead and use them.
Yeah.
But if you're in a situation where you're in a 1-run game or a 2-run game, you're going to win or lose with your 3 best relievers, and the Mariners might be able to pull this off. But right now you're absolutely right. I think the Houston Astros have cooled off a little bit. The Twins are not playing good ball, and really your only competition for that 3rd wild card spot is probably going to be Detroit. I know that we're currently tied with the Red Sox, but do you trust the Red Sox to be able to pull this off with their roster? Maybe not.
Also, I wanted to go over their schedule. Boston's schedule is actually not going to be easy because they have Baltimore, New York, Tampa will at least give them a tough game. So I think that stretch, maybe Boston's run could be over by then. So maybe, I'm not trying to downplay them, but maybe that's like the team of the least to worry about. Now the Tigers have a tough schedule too, because after their series against Colorado, they have Baltimore, Kansas City, and Baltimore. So you can say that possibly that they're not going to be the team to worry about. Now Minnesota is the team I'm most worried about because of the strength of their schedule. They still have another game against Anaheim because that's pretty much a bye series for them, with the exception of Monday when they somehow lost that one. Don't know how, but they did. They have Cincinnati at home, and Cincinnati, as much as David Bell tries as he tries, Ellie De La Cruz, Ty France. Don't know if that's going to be enough for them to win, but maybe Ty France will play for the Mariners as in like, I'll do it for them. Wouldn't count on that, but they're going to be at Cleveland, at Boston, then Miami and Baltimore. So it's kind of a push of a schedule, but the Mariners, bottom line is the Mariners still got to win their games to even make it matter anyway.
Well, I guess
even with an easy schedule, it still doesn't matter.
Well, I wouldn't say it's necessarily all that easy, but so the Mariners split with the A's, took 2 out of 3 in St. Louis, and if they can win, if they win, and if I agree, and if they can split tonight, then it's 4 against Texas, 3 against the Yankees, 3 in Texas, 3 in Houston, 3 in Oakland. The Mariners have to at least split with Texas, take 2 out of 3 from New York, take 2 out of 3. Like they basically have to win out series wise. Because
Texas is actually crazy to think about it. Splitting Texas would actually be a wild success because Max Scherzer is back along with Jacob deGrom, and Texas has a new starter who I also added on fantasy, by the way. So I think realistically a split is going to be the most realistic, but ideally you still want a 3 of 4 against Texas.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
But don't forget, like, Texas with Bruce Bochy, they're not going to just let the season die. Even if they were 20 games out, they are still going to play tough baseball because that's what Bruce Bochy is about. Competition no matter what.
Yeah. 7 games out in the wild card, 7 games out in the standings in the West, and they only trail the Mariners by 3. And if this doesn't play out well, we could end up finishing 3rd in the division. But we have 17 games left. Okay, that's it. 17 games. We have to win at least 10. That's like the minimum, 10.
10 just to maybe have us complain, oh, we missed the playoffs by 1 game. That's what you'll maybe be lucky for. And
that would put us at 83 wins.
Hey.
2 games above. There's a really good possibility we don't finish at 500.
It's a very good possibility.
So, hey, by the way, did you see the, I think it was the Berg Show who said that we could trade Julio. He's really not that great average player. I don't like getting triggered all that often, but that's kind of triggering for me because what's the biggest, like the only time Julio Rodriguez really looked like the MVP was in 2022 in the second half where we actually had lineup protection.
And he has no lineup protection.
That's the biggest issue, right? Julio Rodriguez is in a position where he feels like he has to carry it. And he does not necessarily have it right now. But if the Mariners actually put, I don't know, say Pete Alonso and Juan Soto around him, dream scenario, #dream scenario, he's not going to be required to carry it. Other guys would be able to carry it, and Julio can just have fun, play free and play loose. That's the biggest problem with Julio Rodriguez. It's right now he's still in his 3rd season, and he still hasn't developed the tools to put a team on his shoulders yet. That will happen, but trading Julio Rodriguez right now would be probably franchise crippling.
It really would. And wanted to get back to the Berg Show, and this is going to be the last part of the show because
he's coming hot. He's coming in hot today, man.
Yeah, Berg Show. I really like it. I wonder if he has his own show. But
I would trade Kirby to the Pirates for Brian Reynolds straight up.
That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
I would say maybe Castillo in a package of a prospect, then maybe. But here is the question that I wanted to save. He says, I think everyone on the roster should be gone except for Cal, Luke, Robles, Rock, Logan, Wu, Miller, Munoz. Well, and Julio, I guess. But I would trade the Rock at this point. So to think.
There was also a question that we were going to say for the end of the show. I think it was.
I think it was this one.
No, it was. Yeah, there you go. It's right here. Yeah, that one.
Who in the current roster? Now let's just do this brief. I'm gonna say Julio, Cal Raleigh, Logan Gilbert, Andres Munoz, George Kirby. But I think the rest should be, and I guess Victor Robles maybe, but he's kind of on a hot, so maybe he just lacks off next season. I don't know, but any of the players I said they should be keeps, but everyone else should be kind of open game. I would even
100%.
keep Luke Raley because he's a hustler at least, because I don't know if you're going to get much out of him, so might as well just keep him. But the ones that shouldn't be here,
I'll give you.
I would even be open to trading Bryce Miller to see what we can get out of him. And also trading The Rock. I think he's the first player that must go because contract's too big and he's not living up to that contract anymore.
100%.
So that's the player I want to see go. And Jerry Dipoto should be gone too.
Yeah. I'll give you 3 names who should not be on the roster next year. The first one is going to be Mitch Haniger.
Oh yeah.
Mitch Haniger, as much as and you know how much I love Mitch Haniger. I've been a Haniger homer for quite a long time, but it's obvious that the injuries have caught up to him, and he's going to be 34 next year, and whatever prime he had, it's over. And now you're in a position where you're carrying a dude who's making $15 million a year. He's got an opt-in for next year, and the Mariners need to do themselves a favor and see if somebody would be willing to take it off. And if that means you got to package a prospect with them to have some other team take that contract off your hands, then you got to do what you got to do. The second name on this list is going to be JP Crawford. I know that JP Crawford's a fan favorite, and I understand that he had a career year last year, but if winning a World Series is priority, you have to think about upgrading the shortstop position. If that means JP moves to second base, then so be it. But the reality is, for what we're paying JP Crawford versus what the output and production is, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I think we can find better defensively. I think we can find very much better offensively, and it's something that you can't just continue to roll that back out there. Outside of last year, he's been league average.
Very league average.
And this
it's
is
that backhanded play that's really carried his reputation in 2019. Right. That one lucky play.
Yeah. It was the Gold Glove that he won.
That's carried him.
And it's like, dude, for offensively, we have to be in, like, if he was like clutch, like consistently clutch over the years, where for a fact you can rely on JP Crawford to hit you that clutch base hit with runners on, and he was consistently doing it, that's kind of a different story. But that's not JP Crawford. Not only that, but he also doesn't provide power, doesn't give you any power peripherals, whether it be doubles. And of course, obviously, he's not going to hit home runs. So it's like, if you're going to carry that dude on your roster, then he better be a very good slap hitter, consistent singles hitter, consistently getting on base. That's not JP Crawford. Shortstop has to be considered for upgrade this offseason. And the last one is Luis Castillo. You can make an argument for Mitch Garver as well too, but I think for some reason, I think they carry Mitch Garver next year.
They have to because of that contract that nobody's going to want.
Yeah,
even if the Mariners did trade him, they're still going to pay him not to play. So he's going to be the backup catcher.
It's got 1 year left at $12 million as a part of the 2-year deal, and I can see a situation where they bring him back. He makes the opening day roster and is with the Mariners until like July, and
then they dump him,
and then they'll DFA him after that. But it has to be Luis Castillo because you mentioned earlier about the upside, right? Logan Gilbert still has more development to do for him to peak out and reach his peak. Same thing with George Kirby, man. Like results notwithstanding, I know like lately it seems like he has a good start followed with a bad start followed with a good start, right? But he was absolutely fantastic in the first half, and I just think that he still has to learn how to pitch and learn how to pitch in certain situations. We were talking about Manny Machado situation, and I still think there's a tremendous amount of upside, and he is still not in his arbitration years. There's no need to trade him right now, and that's the same thing with Wu and Miller. Like there's still a couple years away until they even reach arbitration. And so if you're talking about club control, and of course everybody, that's the buzzword when it comes to this roster, club control, then you keep your club control. You keep them because you still got another 3 years with Logan, and another 4 years with George, and another 5 years with Wu and Miller. There's no need to trade them yet. If Logan was coming into his last year before free agency, fair enough, man. Fair enough. But with La Piedra, you're not getting you're paying him starter money and you're not getting starter quality. I know he's a fan favorite. I get it, man. I get it. Everybody likes him. But that being said, you have massive holes on this roster. And if you can check off 3 of them by trading them, where you get a legit all-star caliber outfielder and maybe you get a legit infielder, you do it, man. You do it. Because he's like, it's like, I think that Logan Gilbert and George Kirby are closer to the Cy Young Award than Luis Castillo. I think
Castillo probably won't get one.
I think on a good team, he's a number 3. I think it's time, and I think you get more bang for your buck with Luis Castillo than you would with guys like Logan Gilbert or George Kirby.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hate to say it, we are unfortunately out of time, but everyone that was in the comments, including the Berg Show, Riley, and Kevin Kirby, I appreciate all of the questions and the ideas that were given. You guys kept the show going, and I guess here's the last question I saw. Rumors that, let's hope that doesn't happen. I don't want that to happen.
The first question I have is what's his business acumen? What's his credentials? Has he worked in baseball before? You know what I mean? Like if he's worked in baseball and he's been a part of a front office before, 100%. But that being said, if you're putting in your son to be GM and he doesn't know the game, doesn't have the contacts in the game, doesn't know how to build a roster, that would be equally as crippling to this franchise as trading Julio Rodriguez. You don't just install your son because he went to law school or something like that. It's like, come on, man.
Doesn't really have much of a credible history. I mean, if there was a credible history on Tim Stanton, I think we would have known by now. So why
don't you just hang a sign outside T-Mobile Park that says we're not taking this seriously?
They're not. Yeah, and I would think that's getting Tim Stanton as your GM is a sign of not taking things seriously. But anyways, that's going to do it. And once again, thank you very much for being on this show. And I'll keep you guys updated whether I can make it to the game tonight. And I hope I can make it because it's going to be the September 11th special.
Yep.
So everyone,
I might. Yeah, you asked if I was going to be on your broadcast tonight. I might. It all depends, man. What time is first pitch? 6:30.
6:40. But I'm going to start the show at 6:20 because I got that 9/11 intro that I'm still going to use, and
I can hang out for a little bit.
And I made a national anthem edited video with Jordan Sparks, who performed in the Super Bowl. I'm using that, and I put a lot of clips to support it. So it's gonna be special. And of course, we're gonna talk about exactly what we did on 9/11 because maybe the other half of the audience doesn't know yet. So that's what we are going to do.
You know what? I can hang out a little bit tonight. I don't think I can do the entire game, but I can hang.
Didn't expect, yeah.
By the way, yes, Polanco will not be back, and Riley Perrone. Yeah, we definitely need slap hitters.
Yeah, we definitely do.
Luis Arias would have been great. All right.
Yeah, definitely. Well, everyone have a great day, and also painfully saying, go Mariners.
Go Cougs.